Waveman here with the second installment of RB Noob, that is Realistic Battles Noob, which I am. This time we are looking at the cockpit of the German Bf-110 C-4 as we take off. Now as we watch the takeoff and as we view a couple of realistic battles with the 110, I'm going to read something from the War Thunder Encyclopedia. Now forgive me, there's some German words in here that I'm going to have difficulty pronouncing, so anybody who speaks German out there, I warn you now, I'm going to butcher them. So according to the encyclopedia, throughout the 1930s the air forces of the major military powers were engaged in a transition from biplane to monoplane designs. Most concentrated on the single-engine fighter aircraft, but the problem of range arose. The RLM, which is apparently the German Reichsair Ministry, pushed by Hermann Goering, issued a request for a new multi-purpose fighter called a Kampfverstärker, or battle destroyer, with long range and an internal bomb bay. The request called for a twin-engine, three-seat, all-metal monoplane that was armed with cannon as well as a bomb bay. Of the original 7 companies, Messerschmitt, Focke-Wulf, and Heinkel responded to the request. As we know, Messerschmitt won the contract with what later became the Bf-110. Now an interesting piece of information was the cannon on the 110, which was the MGFF. It was adopted to fire a new type of high-capacity, high-explosive mine shell called a Minengestoß, if I'm remotely correct pronouncing that. It featured a projectile with a thinner wall that allowed increased explosive charge. This projectile was lighter and generated less recoil than earlier projectiles, requiring a modification of the recoil mechanism. The now called MGFF/M was introduced with the Bf-109E4 and Bf-110C4 in the summer of 1940. Messerschmitt omitted the internal bomb load requirement from the RLM directive to increase the armament element of the RLM specifications. The Bf-110 was far superior to its rivals in providing the speed, range, and firepower to meet its role requirements. By the end of 1935, the Bf-110 had evolved into an all-metal, low-wing cantilever monoplane of semi-monocoque design featuring twin rudders and powered by 2 Daimler-Benz 600A engines. The design was also fitted with Handley Page wing slots. The C-4 variant had superior crew protection to the other variants, meaning extra armor for the crew. The Bf-110 served with success in early campaigns of the Polish, Norwegian, and Battle of France. The Bf-110's lack of agility in the air was its primary weakness. This flaw was exposed during the Battle of Britain. As a result, some Bf-110 equipped units were withdrawn, and they were converted to the role of night fighters. The Bf-110 was also successful in some other theaters, including the Balkans campaign, North African campaign, and upon the Eastern Front. It rendered valuable ground support to the German army as a potent fighter bomber. Later in the war it was developed into a formidable night fighter, becoming the major night fighter aircraft of the Luftwaffe. Most of the German night fighter aces flew the Bf-110 at some point during their combat careers, and the top night fighter ace of all time, Major Heinz Wolfgang Schnaffer, flew it exclusively and claimed 121 victories in 164 combat missions. I also found some information on the web from the 354th Pioneer Mustang Fighter Group, but this is about the 110. As the Battle of Britain began in July 1940, the Bf-110 units were committed to a policy of bringing the RAF fighters to combat, leaving the German bombers to arrive over England while the RAF were refueling and rearming. The scheme was a dismal failure, since the Messerschmitts could not match the maneuverability of the Hurricane and Spitfires, As a result, the Bf-110s were unable to defend themselves. The Messerschmitt unit suffered heavy losses, 120 aircraft in August alone. However, given the shortage of German single-engine fighters, the Bf-110s were kept in service, although switching to a fighter-bomber and reconnaissance role. As the winter of 1940 drew in, so the Bf-110s were to find themselves in a more suitable role as night fighters. So that's a little bit of historical information about the Bf-110, but the question, of course, is how does it perform in War Thunder? Well, I've flown it in arcade quite a bit, and I've found it to be the most effective aircraft that I've flown in arcade. I actually have about a 4-to-1 kill ratio in this plane, and around 200 kills and a little less than 50 deaths in it. So I've liked it in arcade very much. So I decided to try it out in realistic battles, one of which you've been viewing as I've been going through the historical information, and actually have found it fairly effective in historical battles as well. I really fly it very much the same way, as what I would call an assassin, not a dogfighter. Now, people have criticized the 110 in War Thunder as being not maneuverable, not particularly fast, not having a particularly good climb speed, and I would say that's all absolutely accurate. It's true. But the advantages the 110 has is it can take a fair amount of damage. As you've seen in this battle, I've been dogged by Spitfires here at the end and surviving. Additionally, of course, the greatest asset of the 110 is its firepower. It has a great bit of firepower to nose, particularly from the cannon. And you can often one-shot a lot of enemy aircraft. As you saw in this battle, I took out 2 enemy fighters in fairly quick order with the cannon in the front, and it can effectively destroy ground targets as well. Now, I was fortunate at the end of this battle that it came to an end, because I was being dogged by those Spitfires, and of course the 110 at low altitude dogfighting is not its forte, and I'm sure eventually they would have killed me off. So here we are in a second battle. I have a different camouflage this time, which I think I earned at the end of that previous battle, and going after some other enemy aircraft. So right there you could see that the firepower of this aircraft is quite effective in both arcade and here in realistic battles. Another positive of the Bf-110 is I found it to be a very stable gun platform. It's easy to aim with this aircraft. Additionally, I haven't had any problems with the wing shearing off, which I have done with several other aircraft when I've gone into dives. I've done it with Beaufighters, Spitfires, 109s, getting used to that in realistic battles, but I've had no problem of diving with this plane. So finding no more air targets to attack, I decided to go for some ground targets in this next area. out of bombs and out of ammunition, I decide to come in for a landing and rearm. Now I found that this plane is fairly easy to land. You need a bit of strip though, because it takes quite a bit of runway to slow it down. Taking off again, I now have my armaments reloaded, including two 250 kilogram bombs. This was one of the things that Messerschmitt decided to put on the plane, an external bomb load, instead of having it within the plane's belly itself, which was the original specifications that the RLM wanted. So the question is, can the Bf-110 also be an effective dive bomber in Realistic Battles of War Thunder? And as you can see, the answer is yes. So my conclusion is that the Bf-110 is effective in realistic battles, and one of the nice advantages is that I think it can be flown in a very similar way in realistic battles as in arcade, which is a nice advantage, so you really don't have to change flying styles. In any event, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and look for future videos on RB Noob.